Okay, so it's 9:30, so I think that we'll start. Welcome everybody to this quarter's DSL network meeting. We've got quite a packed agenda for everybody today. So what we'll be looking at, I'll come on to in a minute, but just some basic housekeeping first. Obviously, please be aware of any environmental noise and only put your microphone on if you're actually going to be talking. Please mute your microphone at all other times. We are recording this session and we make it available to you online as well. So if you wouldn't, we do try and cut people's faces off, but it's sometimes quite difficult to do. So if you wouldn't mind just making sure your camera's off at the time, that would be great. And please feel free to ask any questions that you have as well. Just place them in the chat and we'll come to them. You can do that right throughout the session. As I said, all of our learning sessions are recorded and the slides are available from our website at the address shown, and also they're available from our YouTube channel. Please don't forget to sound like a normal YouTuber. Please don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can get more updates to us. And you can also, following the course, complete the post-course questionnaire in order to obtain a certificate of attendance. So our agenda for today is we will have our police colleagues coming to talk to us about the school liaison officer role and PADLET. We're looking at the early years foundation stage framework. We'll be having a presentation from FEAST about how to engage young people. We'll be looking at some changes with NYES, and then we've got some practice stuff in relation to the exclusions audit, changes to the partnership website, the school safeguarding audit, and we'll be giving you information about what happened in the last one and the new one which we've just launched. Child X as well is another learning lesson, and then we'll be looking at other child safeguarding practice reviews from across the country. So hand over to Heidi.
Morning everybody, I'm Sergeant Heidi Lewis. I line manage the school liaison team for North Yorkshire Police, and we are part of our local policing support department. And I'm not going to take, this isn't going to take very long. It's just going to be a whistle-stop tour of the different subject matter that we can assist with from an early intervention and prevention point of view. Some of you who will have been at the DSL conference in Harrogate back in October may have already seen that we've recently launched a PADLET in relation to the help we can offer, and also our sort of trusted partners for various different subject matter, and I'll go through that at the end as well. Just the next slide, please, Hayden. So we, as the police, have certain guidelines and a strategy towards child-centred policing, as we call it, and that is directed by the National Police Chiefs Council. And that quote there is sort of what is sort of the ethos of my team, but also what we're trying to embed across neighbourhood policing, but also with our response colleagues, with the conversations that we have with them in relation to potentially not wishing to criminalise young people that come into contact with them. So we like to see every interaction as both an intervention and an opportunity. Engagement needs to be positive, and opportunities need to be sought at any point to enhance our relationship with children and young people from a policing perspective. A lot of the work we do has got an evidence base behind it, and we are currently also going through 3 evaluations, independent evaluations in relation to the work that we do with young people, and the aim is to keep children safe and to keep them out of the criminal justice process unless absolutely necessary. Carry on, Hayden. Next one, please. So the schools team, I have 11 altogether across the county, so it isn't very much if you think about the vast amount of schools that there is. And they are, when we look at the Padlet, you'll get the breakdown of the different areas that they're in. And our focus is mainly that early intervention and appropriate engagement at the very earliest opportunity, if possible. We get a lot of inquiries directly emailed into us from school that don't even go through to our force control room. One, because they're probably not at the level of where the force control room would even accept them. However, what we sort of understand and what we believe is that if we can get it at the most earliest opportunity, then we do have ways and means of engaging with those young people, which potentially can stop them from escalating with those risk-taking behaviours or even entering into criminality. The subject matter that we cover is wide-ranging, and this list isn't exhaustive. We do a lot of one-punch awareness, especially around arranged fights and the videoing of those fights and them being shared wider. We touch upon mental health and vulnerable young people as well. In those cases, we do seek to get other services that have got a more specialist knowledge around mental health involved. Sexual abuse and child sexual exploitation, early signs and concerns of those, we can assist with appropriate signposting, but also that initial education around consent and healthy relationships. Domestic abuse, you may not be aware, however, the school liaison officers will receive every single OPIN Compass notification where a PPN, which is the police equivalent of your safeguarding referrals, is attached. So if a school gets that PPN in detail, so will the school liaison officers, and we will screen those. And if we feel that there is further support required within a family that can be supported through school and ourselves, then we'll make contact with you. But also, on the other hand, if you've got further concerns about young people where you are getting the OPIN compasses and you haven't heard from us, then please don't hesitate to do so. Online safety, sexting, youth-produced sexual imagery and the sharing of it is the bane of our lives, and I'm sure it's yours as well. It's the bread and butter of our work, unfortunately, and it's quite sad to see that, despite the fact all of the education that goes in from yourselves through your PHSE as well as us, it is still a reoccurring issue. Again, we don't wish to criminalise young people through the sending of images, but the law is quite strict on that. So using the school liaison team to put that education and intervention in place will often negate a further investigation, which may result in a community resolution disposal or even a caution, which we want to avoid, really. Hate crime, again, a lot of it is one-to-one work that we do with young people. However, we link in really positively with Restorative Solutions and Dave Pascoe's team. They have a specific 2-hour hate crime course that we can refer young people into, or yourselves, and they're just starting to launch assemblies as well around hate crime in schools, which is really positive. Drug and alcohol abuse, we do very little around alcohol, very, very low referral numbers in relation to that. However, in relation to drugs, we do offer the op choice process, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail, which is really positive and has some fantastic results. Missing young people and child criminal exploitation, again, early signs of any concerns of that exploitation risk, I'd urge you to get in touch. We do have our missing and exploitation team that have one-to-one workers that will go out and work with those young people that are escalated to medium and high risk, but it's the low risk ones that we would engage with. And then just what we're hoping, what we have started doing is offering peer group work as well as one-to-one sessions in relation to misogyny and toxic masculinity as well. That's come out of our own, or the police services, VOG and our Opsiteria strategy, and it's a strand of work that we're working closely with our other departments in North Yorkshire Police with, to sort of give schools support around that. Move on, Hayden, please. Yeah, absolutely. It's just really a bit of a repeat of what I've already said. I expanded on a lot of the points already. It's what we try and do is mainly focus our attention on one-to-one and small peer group targeted intervention work. If there is a need identified in a school and it's absolutely necessary, we will also come and do assemblies. However, due to the volume of work that we get through, the one-to-one and the small peer group work is our preferred option. In relation to assembly content and suitable resources, that's where the Padlet comes in, and I'll show you that a little bit later. But again, it's just the additional list of where we can help. Those low risk missing from homes, low risk domestic violence, the up and compass I've already touched upon, antisocial behaviour. Our neighbourhood policing teams will pick up antisocial behaviour individuals when they're about to go onto an acceptable behaviour contract. We try to avoid that, really. CRDs are community resolution disposal, so that's the lowest level of disposal that the police can give an individual. And within that CRD, there is that opportunity to address your behaviour. A lot of the hate crime work that goes through to restorative solutions is on the back of a CRD, where they agree to work with restorative solutions and then the CRD is complete. It will show up on a DBS check, which not everybody is aware of. Anger management, we can refer through the community safety hubs into commissioned anger management support, which is really positive. And then we work really closely with our youth diversion activities and can help with the referrals, such as stepping up, change direction, and in York we have the triage and diversion scheme as well. But all those referral forms and details are actually on the Padlet as well. Next one, please, Hayden. I'm just going to touch upon OpDivan and OpChoice just as a reminder. I'm sure everyone will be aware. OpDivan is our early intervention and prevention in relation session or education that we give young people in relation to carrying knives or weapons, which can often be associated with county lines, exploitation and also bullying. A lot of that work is intelligence based, but it can also be on the back of incidents being reported. The vast majority of our work comes from schools directly in relation to this. Even at primary school, you will find that, you know, your children will bring in show and tell, this is my dad's fishing knife, that sort of thing, rather than go. Obviously schools will have their own policies and procedures, which we absolutely respect, and you need to follow those. But we would really encourage you, if you have got incidents of such where there's no aggravating circumstances and no risk to anybody else posed, that you get in touch with us and we can put that engagement and that education in place. That even applies to secondary school. Across the county, we have negated young people being excluded permanently on the back of the education that we've been able to put in place, and have satisfied school safeguarding that was appropriate at that point in time, and those children have been allowed to continue within their education without further instance, which I think is really important. So yeah, and it covers all incidents involving knives or weapons in the home, education venues and public places. You know, we've had improvised knuckle dusters made out of Meccano, all sorts of things that we've put down as an OpDivan, where we've managed to put that really valuable education in for those young people. OpDivan itself has been running in North Yorkshire for 6 years now, and we're currently going through an independent evaluation that is funded by the government, and it's being led by the College of Policing and the University of Birmingham. That's due to end in April, so it'll be really interesting to see what the results of that are. and we felt it was quite important that we think it works, but somebody else needs to tell us that it does, and also advise us on how we can even improve on it further. Next one, Hayden, please. And op choice. Op choice is the equivalent of Optivan, but in relation to drugs. And it's a process designed for referring children and young people across the county who are found in possession of drugs for the first time, what they agree to, rather than being criminalised for that drugs possession, is to enter into a course of police-led educational sessions, but then also further consideration is then given to refer them into drug service providers and commissioned diversion services. The emphasis very much being on education and harm reduction. The vast majority of young people that have gone through this process do not come to light again for drugs possession. Those that go to on to work with North Yorkshire Rise and Change, Grow, Live in York, we are getting over and over again, we're getting the feedback from those commission services that they're drug free. If we weren't giving them this opportunity, all they would be doing is having a 1 hour conversation online with a drug service provider with absolutely no need for them to engage long term. So again, I think Op Choice has now been in place for 3 years, and York College, on the back of some public health funding, North Yorkshire Public Health funding, are currently in the process of evaluating it as part of the wider evaluation of drug services across North Yorkshire, which is really, really positive. And it again refers to possession in school as well. I get a lot of them are directly from school that we deal with. The one where it doesn't extend to is when a child or young person is found in possession of such a large quantity where it could possibly fall within the supply. What we need to be mindful of there is that they may be being exploited, so we need to get them into, for want of a better word, the system, to allow the appropriate questioning and safeguarding to be put in place long term. And if they fail to engage or refuse consent for us to work with them, then we fall back to the traditional means of disposal methods, which unfortunately leads to a criminal record. But again, there are very few that don't engage in the process. Next one, Hayden. Oh, and there's the Padlet. You couldn't bring it up, could you, Hayden? Laura, who works for me in York, she and schools are quite au fait with the Padlet, I think. I think it was something new to North Yorkshire Police, but it wasn't to schools. So she brought this idea to me that we could really do with having a sort of a bit of a library for schools to go on to, that we continuously update in relation to the support that we can offer DSLs ourselves, but also all the different support services and trusted partners that we've got across the county. So what we've set up is we've got one for county and we've got one for York, and we're currently in the process of designing ones for children and young people themselves. It looks better on a mobile device than it does on a computer, but just to quickly go through it because I'm conscious of time. So it gives you the initial information of who your school liaison officers are in your areas and their contact information, further information how to report online, and then one of my favourites that I keep going on about is a partnership information sharing form to continue for you, please, to submit intelligence to the schools, and then also the MPCC's guide for when to call the police, and there's some further information about police cadets and not reporting anonymously as well, and Crime Stoppers. Then again, just a repeat of what we can offer as a school liaison service and the different subject matters, then our mentoring services that are commissioned and the actual referral forms for those across the county. And then if we move over, there's details there about Dave Pascoe's team and restorative justice and what they offer. That's a presentation that Dave gave at the DSL conference, just to reiterate in more detail what they can do. And then as you'll see, there's like all of the different subjects: drugs and alcohol and vaping, sexting online, safety, cybercrime, sexual offences, harmful sexualised behaviour, county lines and exploitation, domestic abuse, prevent, knives and weapons, hate crime, road safety. It goes on and on and on. All of the different resources that we sort of have that have been accredited through various different means. So please take a look, please refer to it. If you still have questions, get hold of the team. We continuously change it and update it, and then you'll periodically get an email through to say it's been updated with X, Y, and Z. So that's me, Hayden. I don't know how I've done for time.
Slightly over, but we'll catch up, don't worry.
Super.
Heidi, would you mind popping the link in the chat? We've had a few people asking for it, and then I'll make sure it goes on our partnership website as well.
Oh, the Padlet?
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. That's not a problem. I'm off to Crucial Crew now.
We'll have fun.
All right, no worries. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, so thank you to Heidi for that. So now I'm going to hand over to Helen Smith to talk about the new EYFS framework.
Oh, lovely, thanks Hayden. Can you put the next slide up please, Hayden? This is just, obviously you'll get the slides, but this is just a reminder of our team. There's myself, there's Sarah Blake, who's the Early Years Sufficiency Planning Officer, Liz Roberts, who is the Wraparound Childcare Coordinator. And then if you want anything at all in general to get hold of anybody, just contact the Families Information Service, and you'll always be able to get hold of somebody there. Lovely. Next slide, please, Hayden. So just before we talk about the statutory framework changes from next year, I just want to reiterate about Dingley's Promise training, because even though I know sort of Dingley's Promise is obviously about enabling providers to be sort of inclusive, this all ties in with safeguarding, ensuring that children can actually take up their place in an early years setting, and that children aren't being aren't able to take up their places, because that way, if you've got at least 15 hours in a setting, that in itself is 15 hours of safeguarding. So again, it's pleased just to remind your early years team that Dingley's Promise training is available free of charge for all early years staff. In fact, so please access it. We've got 3 mark of achievements been awarded in the county. A childminder, a private day nursery, and 1 maintained nursery. Again, there must be other schools and settings out there that have actually done the work to enable them to have a mark of achievement. So next slide, please, Hayden. So I just want to talk about the EYFS changes, first of all, that came in this year. Please make sure that if you've got early years provision, that you're using the right early years statutory framework, because there are now 2. There's the childminder one and there's the group and the school one. The main changes for this September is the clarification that the Ofsted and the DfE have changed for the childminders, that they can now work on non-domestic premises. So with the school expansion programme, you may find that childminders approach your school about potentially wanting to set up provision as group provision on the school premises if you've got spare space. And from the 1st of November, that is now, they can now register as childminders on non-domestic premises, and they obviously hold a completely separate registration to childminders who are registered on domestic premises. So that's the childminder one. And again, for group and school-based providers, they just clarified the actual qualifications of the requirements for staff who count towards the level 6 staff to child ratio in early years settings. So again, please make sure as a DSL that your staff working with in EYFS have actually got the right qualifications and you work into those right ratios. Dingley's Promise, it's been shared previously, but I mean the slides will be shared. So
Yes,
so
they will.
so obviously the link for Dingley's Promise is on the previous slide. So I just want to talk, next slide please, Hayden. I just want to talk about the reforms from next September 2025. So the DFE did a consultation. That's the 1,470 responses, and this is actually the responses from that and reflections by the DFE have meant that all the proposals that they set out in the consultation will actually be changed from September 2025. So it's about giving you sort of that preparation so you can get these sort of measures in place ready for that. Next slide, please. So one of the main changes, safer recruitment, at the moment, it's actually not a mandatory requirement for early years providers to take up references, but obviously it is good practice. And obviously, if we have any allegations made against staff or anything like that, Ofsted always explore that suitability of staff and whether or not the appropriate measures have been put in place. So again, it's about making sure that from September, those employment references are absolutely taken up. And the references must be taken up prior to the employee taking up the position. So they're saying that it has to be at least one reference, but preferably two. Next slide, please, Hayden. Again, in line with schools, any children in nursery EYFS provision, they will now be required, the provider will be required to follow up on absences and keep those strict absence records. So again, it's about your EYFS, about you as the DSL looking at each child, each individual vulnerabilities, and assessing, your knowledge of that child and their sort of childhood circumstances, and also making sure you've got the emergency contact details, and those contact details have got to be held in your documents. Next slide, please, Hayden. So another change, this is to improve obviously children's safety, and I'm sure you're all aware of sort of tragic cases that have happened recently, and so the tightening up on this, that there's got to be a trained member of staff with a paediatric first aid certificate available when children are eating. So again, it's just to help improve on that. The next slide, please, Hayden. This is the changes to the safeguarding requirements. They've sort of tightened up, strengthened sort of the safeguarding training and how it's to be delivered, and how often early years providers have to have it renewed, and also, tightening up on safeguarding policies and what needs to be included in the safeguarding policy about safeguarding training. Next slide, please, Hayden. And this, again, it's paediatric first aid. This is an amendment to ensure that all early years students and trainees, they are required to have a paediatric first aid certificate. They've undertaken that full sort of 12 hours that's in Annex A at the back of the EYFS statutory framework, in order for them to be included in that ratio at the level below the level of their study. Next slide, please, Hayden. The next change that they brought in is about whistleblowing. So it's about all the early years providers, all the staff knowing how to escalate a concern. And again, this was brought in to sort of align with what's already in place with schools. So again, it's just firming up on those practices. Next slide, please, Hayden. So changes on toileting and privacy. Again, if you've got early years children, especially if you've got nappy changing areas, this is obviously to protect children's safety and having those robust measures in place. I mean, certainly when I was in setting, we used to have a nappy changing log, a toileting log, where we sort of like recorded sort of who changed whose nappy and how long it took. But obviously there's got to be that balance between a child's privacy. So again, it isn't just about changing a child in the middle of a room where loads of other, members of other adults can see, or the children can see. So it is about looking at your space, making sure that you've got the right space available that provides that privacy, yet is balanced with obviously safeguarding considerations. Next slide, please, Hayden. So this is my final slide. So it was just to say, this just gives you a quick summary of subject to parliamentary procedure, which I can't see why it wouldn't go ahead. This will come into force from the 1st of September, and obviously there's information. If you've not signed up to the Foundation Years website, sign up to that for the Everything Early Years. You get newsletters, bulletins, things like that, sort of hot off the press, and then also just about the safeguarding e-bulletin as well. So that's me finished. I have to unfortunately go off to another meeting, but I'll put my email address in the chat bar again, and if anybody wants to follow anything up with me, just drop me a quick email. But I've looked and I've answered the question about the English promise, and you'll get these slides soon. So if there's anything else, thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. Just to confirm, the slides will be available on our learning page together with the video from the session today. So next we have Becky Bulmer from Feast to talk to us.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Hayden. Thank you very much for squeezing me in at the last minute and bearing with me while I got my slides sorted out.
Sorry, Becky, you're very quiet.
Oh, am I? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better, right? Sorry, but I said thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Hayden, as well. And first of all, thank you very, very much to everybody for all the support that you have given to Feast over the last 3 years. We are anticipating, hoping, crossing everything that our funding will continue, because our funding runs out in March. So it's sort of going to be a watch this space thing. But thank you for everything that you've done so far. And I've been in post about 18 months now as the school and pupil lead. And thank you very, very much for all the support that you as schools have given to me, and obviously then given on to the young people and the families that we have as part of the Feast programme. So if you could just whiz along for me, Hayden, that would be lovely, please. I just wanted to clarify the eligibility for young people and Feast vouchers. So there are two things really. We have the children who are automatically eligible. They're automatically eligible, they'll always be eligible, and even if they request to not receive a voucher, actually they are entitled to a voucher as part of the government funding scheme. And those are for the young people who are in families that receive the benefits related free school meals. And you can see there that Feast is North Yorkshire's branding of the Holidays and Activities food programme that is set up by the Department of Education specifically to combat food poverty during Easter, summer and the Christmas holidays. So we don't run during half terms, just for clarification, it's just the main holidays. So other than benefits related free school meal families, there are no other criteria that would guarantee a child or a young person a Feast voucher. We do, however, give you as schools the ability to make young people eligible by exception if they face financial or other disadvantage. I'll just clarify that the second point talks about due to the DFE funding, really, we ask you not to increase that number by over 15%. Although we would never hold anybody to that 15%. If you have children that you believe will be hungry during the holidays, then please go ahead and issue them with the voucher, and we can have conversations about that. But really, we just wanted to clarify at this point in time that this is a food poverty initiative. We have lots of people now because Feast is so well known, lots of people coming to us asking for Feast vouchers, or I'm sure asking you for Feast vouchers when actually they may not be eligible, although they would like to think that they're eligible, I think. So just to clarify the eligibility there, if that's okay, thank you. And then the next one. So just a little update on the summer. I had done my presentation to talk about secondary provision, so I will come on to that a little bit towards the end, but I know there are the majority of people that are on with us today are primary, so I have tweaked it a little bit for primary as well. So we issued during the recent summer holidays just over 17,000 vouchers. So that means there are 17,000 children, or just over, who would be in families where they're claiming benefits related to free school meals. In the primary area, 42% of those vouchers were redeemed. In the secondary area, it was 21%, and with our SEND families, it was 33%. So in total, 35% of the vouchers that we issued were redeemed. And then we monitor after that the families that then book. So a parent might redeem a voucher, but it's then whether they go on to book or not, or whether there are places available, because that has also become something we've had to consider. So primary, 53% of the ones that redeemed booked. In secondary, it was 30%. In SEND, it was 49%, and then for the total, it was 48%. So that was just a little bit of the data for the summer holidays. Thank you. So my role has been very, very much about school engagement. We use an app called Holiday Activities that talks to the schools, talks to the providers, and talks to the parents. And so far, 89% of the schools have automated their allocation of vouchers. So that means that you would not have to think about allocating your vouchers at the next round of allocation, because the system will do it automatically for you. So it is the majority of schools, but there are still some schools out there who haven't taken advantage of that yet. We would then say, if you wish to make children eligible by exception, you do have to go into your system every single holiday and choose those children and young people. And for Christmas, we're well in the throes of Christmas now. The completion date to do that is actually tomorrow. So if you haven't selected your eligible by exception children yet, could I urge you please to do that as soon as possible. And then the vouchers will go live on Monday, the 25th of November. In addition to us asking you to make sure everything's in place by the 13th of November, we have made a commitment to share with you the activities that will be available to the young people tomorrow as well. That is for you to use to work with your families that might need a bit of extra support or a little bit of extra help. At this moment in time, that is not going live on our website. It will go live on the 25th of November at the same time as the vouchers go live, but you will have that information, so you'll be able to use that if you want to work with particular families that you have. And then thank you again to everybody who filled in our school feedback form. 100% of you said you used our website to check eligibility and to look for local activities, which was great. 100% said that you'd found it easy or very easy to respond to parents' queries. That's quite a big change from last summer. Last summer, we had the majority of people saying that they found that quite a tricky thing to do. So we're pleased that we've been able to support with that. Particularly those with English as an additional language as well, we've been able to support there. And 80% of the people that filled in the feedback said they had displayed the posters and had handed out the flyers to families. So that's just a little bit about what's happening with engagement. Thank you. 34 schools ran activities on site, and for those of you that have maybe worked with me, that has been something that I have been working really hard to try to get schools to do, and that has included 3 special schools that have come on board with us. We have supported you with the regular email communications, red bag updates, a school toolkit for marketing and things like that. I've supported individual schools where they've reached out to me. I've attended feast breakfast clubs or coffee mornings. I'm pretty much happy to come out and support with anything that you would like in terms of parental contact. If you want me to come talk to parents, I'm more than happy to do that. And I will provide you, or I continue to provide you with your redemption rates and the booking rates. And I can give you some more detailed data as well if you reach out to me and ask for that information. We're giving strong support to all of you schools. Now, you are the ones that make the decisions about whether these young people get an eligible by exception voucher or not, and we will support your decision every step of the way. we're very aware that sometimes those decisions are quite difficult for the families, so we will support with that. We have introduced the School Engagement Awards, which I'm going to talk to you about in a minute, and I am really starting to do some targeted work with our secondary age young people, which I'll talk to you about a little bit more in a second as well. And that's the next one. So the School Engagement Award was set up to recognise the effort that schools are putting into helping the families to access the programme. We have 3 different levels. We have the supporter level, the advocate level and the champion level. We would like everybody to be in the supporter category and then move up to advocate and move up to champion. That's a process that we hope will happen. And I will be able to supply you, I have already supplied, but I'm certainly happy to again supply the criteria that we use to make the decisions about those 3 different levels. And that's the next one. So prior to the summer holidays, these were the 7 School Engagement Awards that we started with. So Keble Gateway in Thirsk and Brooklands School in Skipton became supporters. An advocate was North Rigton Primary in Harrogate, and then our champions were Coppice Valley, Friarage School, Brayton and Welburn Hall. And again, I'd love the next time round to see a secondary school on there. That's my aim, to work with the secondary schools on that one. Okay, and so I have started to do some work with secondary schools, and my first approach really was to go do a little bit of pupil voice with the secondary schools. So I've worked with a group of young people from year 7 upwards, because very clear that it needed to be across the whole of the secondary school age range. And really, I just went and spoke to them about FEAST, what they knew about FEAST, what they didn't know about FEAST, that kind of thing. And 41% of the young people I spoke to, and these were people who would be eligible for a FEAST voucher, so they were families who where the free school meals were in place. 41% of the young people had heard of FEAST, and 17% knew that FEAST offered free activities and a meal during the 3 main school holidays. I was really careful with the wording when I spoke to the young people, because we're also very mindful that we don't want it to be seen as any kind of a stigma that you get a free school meal and therefore you're different or anything like that. So 17% of them knew that they could, that FEAST people could have free activity and a meal during the school holidays. So that's an area that I really, really significantly want to work on, and would very much value your feedback and suggestions about, if you have any. And then I think, is this my last slide? This was the, yeah. So what we would like secondary schools to consider doing is appointing a FEAST advocate in school for the secondary people that are on with us today. I think that the way the system tends to work through the secondary schools a lot of the time now is the finance people issue the vouchers, which is absolutely great, and the young people get the vouchers, but then the support for the family, we're hoping we will be able to sort of increase and work with you more on. So maybe somebody in the pastoral team or a head of year who would know who the eligible children were, and therefore be able to support them a little bit more, or support their families maybe. So currently the vouchers are sent directly to the priority parent, and obviously as the children get a little bit older, the young people are probably want more of a choice about the activities that they're booked onto. We are working with the North Yorkshire voice engagement team, I hope I've got that the right way around, to look at the activities that we can provide for these teenagers as well, that really, really support them. But we're also asking maybe if secondary schools could think about the use of direct emails to these young people to let them know that activities are available. Or I know the primary schools use things like Class Dojo or Tapestry or Seesaw, things like that. I'm not, and this is my naivety, I'm not familiar with what happens in secondary schools with those, but I do know where the primary schools have used these classroom management apps. It's been very, very successful, and we're hoping that we'll be able to work with the secondary schools on something like that as well. So have I got a couple of minutes, Hayden, maybe? If anybody has any suggestions or any questions, I would be really, really grateful if you could put that information into the chat, and then I will pick up any information from there. And by all means, if any of you want to contact me directly, please just go ahead and do that. Sharon, we have all our pupil premium set vouchers, should it be FSMs only? FSMs, we would say yes automatically, but then you can make the decision about your group of pupil premium young people and whether you believe that they would be eligible by exception or not, bearing in mind that it's a food poverty programme. So I hope that answers that question. Sharon, does that answer for you? Perfect, thank you. And thank you very much, everybody. And again, thank you for the support that you have given to me over the last 18 months and to Feast for the last 3 years. We really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Okay, so the next one is in relation to NYES and early years resources. I don't think that we've got Rachel on the line or Siobhan. So just to go over what they wanted to bring to the group is that there is the new early help landing page, which provides a suite of information resources to all practitioners in the work with children, ensuring that there are consistent messages and use consistent language and take consistent approaches to the delivery of a service to the children and families they work with. They've also added key information that feels that they feel supports the work, and more sections will be added over time. So this is a developing resource, but the code that is on the screen there, the QR code, you can access the page from there, or else you can visit the NYES info website, nyes.info/early help. So any information that you want to obtain from there, just, please have a look. There is, like I said, a wealth of information that's available, and it's going to be another growing resource for you when you work with children and young people and the families. So next off, I'll hand over to Kat to just start off our business unit update.
Morning everyone, my name's Kat Morrison. I'm a Policy and Development Officer for the North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children Partnership Business Unit. We're going to do a few updates, myself, Hayden and Steph. If you can just go on to the next slide for me please, Hayden. Just a quick one before we jump off really, is hopefully you're all aware of this, but we did kind of publish this late September, early October. We do have our new NYSCP annual report. So this is a really interesting document to basically just see the breadth of the work of the partnership that's been completed over the last 12 months. So it's always a useful one to share. You can start to kind of pick up some of the contextual elements of North Yorkshire as well. And just to kind of highlight to you our priorities for the coming year as we move into 2025, they will focus on criminal and sexual exploitation, strengthening the role of education in the partnership. Obviously, we know that was a key function that was mentioned in the new Working Together to Safeguard Children, children and young people's emotional and mental health, and online safety as well. Hayden, I think onto the next slide, that's yours, isn't it? Oh no, we're going to do the website update. Right, so just bear with me 1 second. So hopefully you'll have seen over the summer holidays, we've had a little bit of a website refresh. So primarily you can see that we've changed the entry points just on the bottom of that slide there. So we've now got specific entry points. Obviously the key one around kind of if you're worried about a child is the same. We've made no changes to that. And we do have that professional entry point, but we've also kind of done some refreshing of, we've got an entry point for resources for children and young people, parents and carers as well, and communities. So that's kind of like your voluntary sector, your local businesses and things like that. Hayden, I wonder if you could just go and scroll onto the information for schools section, please. So as you can see, this is really easy to access. You can either click on the professionals tab or the drop down bar at the top. But one of the key bits that we've put together for education and early years providers is kind of a little bit of a single page hub for you with all of our key information and resources specifically for schools and early years providers. So I'm not going to steal Steph's thunder, but as you can see, we've kind of topped off the page with one of our key bits at the minute, which is the safeguarding audit, and that will take you to our kind of hub with all the information there. But we've also got information around keeping children safe in education, our safeguarding policy, documents, anything that's particularly practice guidance or 1-minute guides specifically for education settings. Obviously, we've got a breadth of practice guidance and 1-minute guides that you can access on that separate tab in the professional section. I've just been beavering away in the background. I've added the North Yorkshire Police support for school DSLs PADLET link in there as well, and it also links you to things like the Be Aware Child Exploitation Hub, where we've got specific resources that we've put together for schools and early years providers. Again, we've linked the previous audit so you can look at the findings from those, which I think we're going to have a look at later on in the morning. And we've got some of the work around the early years settings and those training and learning events that we put on for the DSLs as well. So we'll link the recording onto this page as well. Just finally at the bottom, this is a really useful guide that's been put together by Gemma Orr, who is our contextual safeguarding officer, who tends to chair all the MACE 2 minutes meetings. This is a really nice kind of back of staff room toilet door poster that you can print off, but it's all around kind of key safeguarding messages around online safety. So like the storing and sharing of passwords, things like meeting in real life. This is a resource that you can pop on your e-bulletins that you're sending out to parents or put on your website, and it links to all of our Be Aware resources as well. So that's a really nice new one that you can kind of pop anywhere really on your school sites and promote to parents and to your staff teams. I think that's it for the website updates, Hayden.
Okay, so that's over to me now for the exclusions audit. So this was an audit that's been undertaken by the partnership through the multi-agency audit group, and some schools will have had some input into this. Basically, the national data indicates that the number of permanent exclusions has increased across all schools, irrespective of type, since COVID has passed by. The Institute for Public Policy and Research, their report Making the Difference study, found that excluded pupils were the most vulnerable in society, and after taking into account poor outcomes throughout their lives, each excluded child is estimated to cost the state another £370,000 each in education, and benefits and all of that sorts of healthcare, criminal justice costs, which equates to 2.1 billion for last year's cohort of excluded pupils. Excluded children are more likely to have multiple complex needs, and they're also twice as likely to be in care, 4 times more likely to have grown up in poverty, 7 times more likely to have special educational needs, and 10 times more likely to suffer from a recognised mental health illness. And those figures are from the IPPR. More likely, the children who are excluded are also more likely to be vulnerable to criminal and sexual exploitation as well. And what happened was we saw increases in the number of exclusions in January 2023, which continued to grow by May 2023. And the NYSCP executive decided to undertake an audit of excluded cases. The group agreed the cohort of 4 cases to be audited, with 1 primary and 3 secondary, from a mixture of maintained and academy schools, with children selected basically at random. So in terms of what has happened in terms of the school audit, the Good practice areas that were identified from the audit identified that for each child, it was clear that excluded and suspended school recognised neurodiversity in the child's attendance at the school. Each school was able to demonstrate implementing individualised learning plans, have emotional health and wellbeing support, and attempts at engaging with the family network as well. Each school provided evidence of reasonable adjustments having been made based on the child's SEMH and SEND requirements. In relation to relational based practice, there was good evidence of parental engagement from multi-agency partners, with it being demonstrated that practitioners understood the importance of working with the child's family network in order to promote positive school attendance. School staff evidenced working hard to build and maintain positive relationships with parents, and each member of school staff in attendance at the meeting was able to demonstrate relational based practice with the child and family members. Staff were able to explain a child's strengths and their personalities and their areas of support needed, and the group agreed that each child had received a high level of care and attention, with school staff clearly demonstrating having the best interest of the child at heart of their work. In relation to strengths-based practice, for all schools, it was clear that there was a culture of suspension and exclusion being the last resort, with schools demonstrating making use of multiple strategies in order to keep a child in school. When suspension and exclusions took place, this was done to ensure the safety of the child, their peers and school staff. Each school evidenced restorative working being undertaken with children prior to and after suspension, reintegration meetings taking place between the school and the wider family. School staff were made use of the behavioural contracts that strength-based and tailored-based needs of the child questions, with risk assessments being completed with recognition of the child's specific vulnerabilities and trigger points. Excuse me. In relation to information sharing, the group found that referrals were made to the child social care. They were done timely, with detailed presenting of issues, and appropriately shared. The referrals were made with the consent of the family, which ensured appropriate support was able to be provided, allowing for practitioners to work alongside the family. And when multiple agency meetings took place under SIN or CP processes, information was appropriately shared. Handovers did not always happen at transition points for children. However, there was a handover between schools during the year transfers, or from primary or secondary transitions. It was robust evidence of understanding of the child's needs and how they impacted on the child's ability to engage in education. In terms of areas for development, there was a considering alternative hypothesis. Neurodiversity was recognised in each of the 4 children. However, it may be that there is an over-reliance on diagnosing neurodiversity for children who display challenging behaviours, and the group felt that they had not always been the necessary consideration given the alternative hypothesis to explaining challenging behaviour. In terms of assessments, the group found that assessments were not always SMART, which meant that it was difficult to evidence agreed targets or what progress had been made. Children had been spoken with as part of the assessment process, and the child's views and wishes, feelings were not always evident in the assessment planning, and consideration had not always been given to the child and how these could impact on the child's ability and behaviours in school life. In terms of multi-agency working, whilst it was clear that some agencies did informally communicate with each other, the group found that communication was not always consistent. Multi-agency meetings were not always convened, and as such, plans were not produced with multi-agency roles and responsive recommendations, and the lack of multi-agency communication may have also prevented the consideration of cumulative risks, as certain information was not known to all agencies. Since the audit has happened, there's been a number of different things that have been initiated. Work is ongoing to explore neurodiversity and how it impacts both children and parents, and that we're maybe looking at some guidance or maybe future training in relation to that. We are looking at the different ways and contact points in which youth voice can be captured, and how we can be creative regarding the engagement with different youth groups to provide more insight into how the voice of the child can be obtained. There is the new education subgroup, which has been adopted by the partnership, and that is looking into issues relating to handover procedures. And trauma can have significant impact on children and families, and the practice and learning subgroup is examining how trauma-informed practice examples can be identified and shared to raise awareness of how trauma impacts their lives and raises awareness. So sorry, I can't see the chat. Is there anybody who's got any questions on any of that?
No, nothing's come up, Hayden.
Okay, brilliant. So in terms of the school safeguarding audit, I'm going to talk about the previous one, and then I'll hand over to Steph, who will talk about the 24-25 audit. So obviously we have our biennial school audit, which is a self-assessment, and we took a random sample of 3 schools, which we then invited to a panel session, which was a more in-depth discussion with partners. And the areas of strength that we identified in here was we saw that safer recruitment was very well embedded across schools, 100% compliance across the management of safeguarding sections of the audit, and safeguarding training and induction was also included for staff, which was very good to see. And there was also creativity of delivering safeguarding key messages as well, which really helps to get the message out to members of staff. And then in terms of prevent and radicalisation, the majority of schools reported that leaders and staff had received appropriate training for prevent and radicalisation, with between about 6 to 11% of schools reporting that this was an area for development. In terms of the summary of recommendations, there were a number of recommendations that were made of the audit, and a report has gone to the practice and learning subgroup, and partner actions are being worked on, or in many cases have already been completed by the relevant partnership subgroups. So we had updates to the recruitment of the Keeping Children Safe in Education requirements for practice guidance to be updated there, which has been done. Raising the awareness of compliance with safer recruitment practices as well, and awareness of multi-agency safeguarding links with the NYSCP. This is basically the DSL email. The request is that you create an email address that is a DSL at and in your school normal extensions. The virtual school linking with schools who do not have a designated teacher for children in care. And if you're one of those schools, you should have had a visit from the virtual school. And we'll also be looking at promoting of emergency planning tools as well for schools. The NYSCP will be sharing updates of practice guidance, which will be through this channel and other methods as well. And also the escalation policy shared in the DSL network meetings and circulated to partners wider wider across the board, such as the police. So this, we have renamed this guidance now, and if I can remember the correct title of it, it is managing professional. No, I've lost it. Can you remember what? Remind me what the title is?
Yeah, it's managing different professional perspectives. So I'll cover it off in a couple of slides for you.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep forgetting the title of that. Support for early years settings with non-compliance with intimate care. Will be help coming in from Helen and her team in relation to that, and also promoting health and safety policies as well. So we've produced practice guidance, etc., on what I've already mentioned. We've established the contact list for DSLs. We are in a virtual school. We'll be doing regular e-bulletins that will be sent to the DSLs via email addresses. We're looking at restrictive interventions, and we are going to be looking into key training for DSLs, so that you know exactly what training you should be taking. And obviously I've mentioned about Helen as well there also. So that's in terms of the previous audit and where we are with that. I'll now hand over to Steph to talk about the new audit.
Thanks, Hayden. Morning all. Firstly, a thank you to all of you for joining this morning. We appreciate it's a significant period of time taken out of your morning, so thank you, and we hope you find it useful. Please do ask any questions in the chat. So to introduce myself, my name is Stephanie Freeth. I'm a Policy and Development Officer for the NYSCP. I work alongside Kat and Hayden. So on that note, Kat and Hayden, keep me to time, because there's a lot that I could talk about and I want to share with the group on this, so hold me to account should I go on. So as Hayden has said, he's talked about the previous audit. You'll now know that the most recent audit, so that's the one for the 24-25, is with you now, sitting in your email inbox, so you'll be aware of that. Want to kind of talk about the approach for this audit and the next audit, which will be 26-27. As you know, the audit comes out every 2 years. So in order to talk about what we're going to be doing in the future, I want to kind of talk about the past and the present somewhat. So as you can see from the slides, we have a two-phased approach to this. So phase one is the audit that you already have with you. And just to give you some background on this, going back to the summer, just before we broke up for the school holidays, we worked with a group of partner schools, and that had come about via another group that we have, which is the Working Together for Education Forum. And we asked for representatives from that particular group that would help feedback with regard to the school safeguarding audit. Now, very fortunately, we had a group of schools, both academies and maintained, primary and secondary, a group of people that were willing to help us with that. The first thing to say while I'm talking about that is this is something we're looking to expand, and I notice from the invites and the attendee list we do have schools on. For example, I know we have special schools on this morning, and we're really looking for your support and your feedback moving forward to the next audits. So as you can see from the slide here, the process that we're going through is an ongoing iterative process. We have already sent the audit out, as you're well aware, and for this audit we have made some changes. Having said that, we do know that we can and we should make improvements to the audit. The audit this time round has similarities to the previous audit, and we thought at this stage, given the time that we had, we would rather deliver something that was familiar to schools and they knew how to operate, rather than reinventing the wheel. And frankly, the time to do that, to come up with a solution that works for most schools across our county, just wasn't going to happen. So we didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver. The most important thing, and one of the main things in terms of the feedback from the partner schools that we have worked with, was very much that we understand and we recognise that the audit can take a significant time for people that are already busy and trying to wear several hats and juggle several things at once. And kind of the feedback that we did get from the group of schools that we've worked with thus far was, we complete the audit and then what happens? So it's very clear that we need to be better at feeding back the outcomes of the audit and the changes that have been put in place. So for the 24-25 audit that you currently have, one of the most important things was to look at the timeline around it. So getting the audit out when we have and giving you until the end of February 25, we are hoping means that you have time to do it, and have time to look at the audit, and also we can disseminate outcomes of that audit prior to your next academic year, so you can put things into place. That said as well, you know, the aim of the audit, and we know your overarching aim is for all of us to keep children safe, and in conjunction with that, not only is that the right thing to do, but also with new and reiterated guidelines in working together, that is what we're doing. There's already been some talk as well of the education forum that was mentioned previously, and the groups that we're now running to kind of augment the relationship we have with education partners. So I think I've gone on enough on that slide. Hayden, if you'd move on, that'd be great. Okay, so phase one, as I've talked about, so we've used the existing tool. It's familiar to schools at the moment, and we thought it unfair to introduce something new at the beginning of a half term without any prior knowledge. As we said already, these audit findings need to be shared in time for the new school year and at the DSL conference in September 2025. We're very aware as well as an organisation that the audit period is, the audit isn't just completed by you as DSLs. You also do that in conjunction, depending on the school as well, and the size of the school and the setup of the school, sometimes with health and safety people, office people, and we've sectioned it off so that can be done over time with hopefully some buffer in that as well. As Kat has already alluded to already, we've made sure the information for the audit is centralised. There's a lot of supporting guidance around the audit, but we've wanted to make it clearer and in one place. And also, hopefully, by use of different media and by the tool itself, to make it clear that you can produce an action plan within the audit tool itself, which then can be copied over to your wider school plan. So next slide, please, Hayden. So, to be specific about what I've talked about, just pop back a slide for me. That'd be great. Thank you. So the feedback that we've got has been from a cross-section of schools across North Yorkshire. We've also looked at other safeguarding partnerships, and I think given the time, we looked at about 6 or 7 different partnership audits, not just for this audit, but for going on and looking at future. And we cross-reference against NSPCC guidance as well. Obviously, we reference against the new changes to keeping safe as well. And in conjunction with our school improvement partners as well, we reworded and amalgamated certain sections as well, in keeping with keeping safe and Ofsted parameters. We also added 2 new sections as well. And this is something we did in conjunction with education partners as well, because what we don't want to do is continue to expand the size of the audit and the questions of the audit if it's not appropriate to do so and if it's not useful. So there were lots of discussions around this, and we added a culture of safeguarding section. And the thought around that was, we'd had questions with regard to culture before, but they were kind of quite disparate throughout the whole tool as well. So we wanted to make this really, really clear. And we thought, with regard to new guidance and legislation and looking at things like harm outside the home and the rise in harmful sexual behaviour, that this was an area we could really focus in on. As well, schools felt as well that they really wanted to highlight the good work that they are doing around culture, as well as to kind of take a bit of a temperature check, you know, so what do pupils understand about the culture of safeguarding? Is their voice heard? What do parents think? So it was felt that it was useful to put this section in. Similarly with the policy checklist, It is very much that. It's a section whereby it's split into statutory and non-statutory policies. And even though there are questions there, the idea is to go through and check against your policy list and say yes, no, yes, no. So it should be a quick and, again, useful section to the audit. But again, we're really interested to hear your feedback on this one and for future iterations as well. So next slide, please. Next slide, please, Hayden. Love. Oh, just pop me back one. Thank you.
Sorry, my machine's got a mind of its own this morning.
No worries at all. So very quickly on this one, as we mentioned already, without labouring the point, we do have a specific safeguarding audit section on the website, so that information can be easily found for you and in one place. So we've made it more accessible. We've also looked at FAQs as well and different types of media as well for the guidance. So not only is it in one place, there's a video walkthrough as well as more traditional how-to guidance as well. We're planning on drop-in support sessions, and they'll be topic by topic. And as soon as we've decided upon the dates, we'll disseminate that information out to you so you know when that is. Also, as well, from feedback from our education partners, Hayden mentioned previously that after the audit, we take a 3% dip sample of schools across North Yorkshire, and then what were called panel discussions are had about audit findings and outcomes. Now, the overwhelming feedback on the back of that was before some of them were held at County Hall. Now, that's a lot of time to take out of your day to go into County Hall for already busy people. So they're going to be held locally on site at schools for the schools that do take part in them as well. And it's also another function we're looking at expanding as well. Again, feedback from partners is that they could be really useful and expanded. So that's something we'll be looking at for the 26-27 audit. Next slide, please. So very quickly, because I'm very conscious of the fact that we're over time. So this is our plan on a page for phase 1 of the audit, so the audit we're in now. So looking at the green section, you'll see that's very much where we are. Like I've said, our deadline for the audit is the 28th of February, so that's about 14 weeks, taking out holidays. And you'll see after that, looking at the orange section, the idea is that we disseminate that information back to you at the DSL conference and reporting that back actually prior to that. As you can see from the top section, the prep section there in the kind of lighter amber colour, I don't know if you can see it on your screens, but there's a long bar going across the bottom depicting that the work for 26-27 has already started and is ongoing. So if you forward on for me, please, Hayden. So phase 2, as I've said, well, it doesn't start now, it's already started. It started back in summer. What we're looking to do, again, like I said, is survey schools, and we'll look at how we're going to do that. But we'd be really grateful if you could note down any feedback, any ideas that you have, or any ideas that come from completing the audit that you have now. As I said, we're looking at expanding the audit group. We do have good representation, but we are conscious, for example, that we don't have an independent school on there. I don't think we have a maintained nursery, and off the top of my head, I think we would really very much like representation from a special school as well. So we're already exploring different technology and data solutions. That's already ongoing. Again, if you have any ideas or anything you've used elsewhere, that'd be really, really useful. Again, it's a bit of an ask, but we ask that for this audit and the proposal for the next audit that we use acceptance test it. And we don't just mean that from a functional point of view, as in how long does it take to complete the audit, what worked, what didn't, what do you like, same with the guidance, same with the website. And again, as I've mentioned already, we're looking at expanding the post-audit forums as well, because we want to understand how they can be more useful and how we can improve communications. So that's a whistle-stop tour of what we're doing now. Thank you very much. Should you want to be part of the safeguarding audit group, please do pop your email address in the chat now. That would be really, really useful. And we'll send you an invite. We're looking at meetings being half-termly, if not termly. And again, if more useful to you, we're looking at doing those meetings after school hours to help facilitate your time better. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steph. My turn now. I am aware that you are kind of getting lots of information thrown at you at the minute, but we're going to just have a little touch on professional curiosity. This is off the back of quite a significant piece of work that's been completed by partners over the last year, really, where we've completely rewritten and redesigned our professional curiosity piece of practice guidance alongside our managing different professional perspectives piece of practice guidance as well. They're two pieces that really should be read in conjunction with one another, and I've popped them in the chat so you can access them. We did a learning event on this last week, which is about an hour long. Hayden's in the process of editing it, and when it's there, we will pop it on the YouTube channel. So I'm not going to go into a vast amount of detail on it, but I would really encourage you to access that hour's learning. And again, you can use it in a staff training session. You can kind of send it as a link to your staff teams. Professional curiosity is really for everybody, and the session touches on some stuff in a lot more detail in regards to think about what Hayden said a few slides back when we looked at some of the audit work around some of those gaps in professional curiosity, and this idea of the consideration of an alternative hypothesis. So obviously he touched on this idea of young people behaving in particular ways due to kind of a diagnosis of a neurodiversity. But what we were finding in the audits was also there was a lack of consideration that behaviour may be caused by other things as well, namely trauma or any adverse childhood experiences. So we go into that in a lot more detail. We do a really useful exercise that kind of explores that, which you can do with your teams if you're finding you particularly kind of stuck on how to move forward with a case. Hayden's said it's on YouTube now, which is great, so you can access it. So when we're talking about professional curiosity, it feels like it's kind of done to death, in the sense that it's on all of our case reviews, it's on all of our national case reviews, and there's probably a wealth of knowledge and experience in this virtual room around professional curiosity. And I always like to start with this slide, in that everything that we do starts with curiosity, and all of our kind of knowledge and experience that we have. We know children and young people, we know families, but it's always around kind of being aware that every child and young person and family is different. And no matter how many times we've kind of gone through this before, there is a process of learning this child, this individual, or even this professional that we're working alongside. Hayden, if you can move on to the next slide, please. So when we're talking about being professionally curious, this piece of practice guidance we've put together for any professional or volunteer working with children, young people, parents and carers, and adults and with care and support needs. We've done it in conjunction with adult services as well. So think about your staff teams in your school. It's not necessarily just for your head teachers and your DSLs. It's who else is in your school that's engaging with families and young people. What guidance do they need around being professionally curious? It's fundamental to how we work with everybody. So, and included, when we think about this, it's all about kind of that relationship-based approach. And when we think about those relationships, it's about, yes, the relationships we have with children and young people and parents and carers, but it's about the relationships we have with the other professionals that we're working with. And also this idea of the relationship that we have with ourselves, and kind of challenging ourselves a little bit more and kind of pushing our own thinking outside the box. So professional curiosity is ultimately kind of a practice mindset and a bit of a communication skill. It involves exploring and understanding what's happening by asking questions and maintaining that open mind. It's about understanding one's own responsibility in managing risk and safety, and knowing when to act rather than making assumptions and taking things at face value. We need to see all interactions with children, young people and families as an opportunity to develop those kind of really meaningful and rich conversations and relationships based on seeing them and developing their strengths. And yeah, so when we look at being professionally curious, hang on, I think we've covered that one off, haven't we? So like I say, rather than dwelling on the fact and I want you to kind of access the video, I'm just going to give you a really quick 2-minute video. Hayden, that's on the next slide. Hopefully you've shared with sound. But this sums it up better than I can, really.
Professional curiosity is often described as looking beyond the face value of something, but it's actually about the use of your whole body. It's about your eyes and your ears, what you've seen and what you've heard. It involves getting a head start and never answering questions from off the top of your head. It's about being nosy with good intentions and making sure that you see what might be right in front of your nose. Occasionally, it's about sticking your neck out and even sometimes putting your neck on the line. Sometimes there'll be a lump in your throat and you might want to hold your breath. You shouldn't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, but you do have a responsibility to be curious about what's going on around you. It's about really trying to get at what's at the heart of the matter. It's about recognizing when someone is trying to keep you at arm's length and understanding what that's about. It's about understanding what's in your hands and perhaps even using the long arm of the law when you need to. It's about finding your feet in a situation, and it might involve standing your ground. It's about being aware of the toe curling moments and sometimes taking things one step at a time. It's about the tummy sinking moments, the butterflies in there, and your gut instinct. It's about listening with your whole body, from the top of your head to the tip of your toes.
So that's just a really nice little analogy. Again, 2 minutes that you can go and share with your staff teams to just kind of get that fundamental aspect of professional curiosity. Now, alongside this document, we've produced a piece around managing multiple different perspectives. This was previously called our kind of professional resolutions guide, and please rest assured that we have included that professional resolution guidance piece in there as well. But what we wanted to shift kind of the narrative of this document was the focus on it not being about conflict and as such conflict resolution, but more around kind of managing and understanding multiple perspectives. And the fact that there isn't always a kind of a right or a wrong, and it goes back to that idea of a multiple hypotheses, really. We all have different ideas about what may be best for this child or young person. And ultimately, by putting those ideas together and exploring those multiple perspectives, we're only going to get the best outcome for that family or young person, really. So again, a very quick analogy. We go into this in so much more detail in the session, but again, much more of a quicker explanation than I can on this one.
The principle of the beach ball is one of the most powerful principles on perspective taking that you can bring into a facilitation. Imagine that there was a beach ball in the center of the room. Based on my perspective, my senses, my expertise, my experience, everything that I am is telling me that this beach ball is red. So what's the first thing that someone on the other side of the room thinks when they hear me say that? That I'm wrong. How could that possibly be? From their perspective, the beach ball is clearly blue. The principle of the beach ball tells us to hold the space for all perspectives. No one can see an entire beach ball from one perspective. That's impossible. What we're going to be working on today will be a lot more ambiguous than a beach ball. No one will have the one perfect perspective. There's no such thing. Trust in your colleagues that when they share what they share, they're giving you a glimpse of their perspective. And challenge yourself to say, how might all these perspectives be true? By bringing in all perspectives, we get a clearer picture of the whole. I've heard the principle of the beach ball used by many facilitators, including Elise Yanker and Nancy Reuscher, so I'm not sure where it originally.
Okay, so again, for me, that's my favourite analogy when we think about multiple perspectives. You know, people talk about having different pieces of the jigsaw, but yeah, it's just that kind of, you're seeing it from your own point of view, your own context of what you know around that family or young person, and someone else may know something else. And I think someone shared with me something really interesting the other day, in that the sense of when we're having these kind of multi-agency meetings about children and young people and families. Everyone in that room has kind of come to this profession, whether it's a teacher or a social worker or someone working it from a police or a health perspective. They've all chosen that role over being a chef or a bricklayer or an accountant, because there's something fundamental in them around that kind of wanting what's best for families and young people. So again, it's not that kind of around who's right or wrong. Everybody's coming with their own perspectives, and a lot of this practice guidance is around understanding that, how to kind of build your own skills and confidence in sharing your perspective, particularly when you are going against maybe everyone else in the room, how to do that in a safe and positive way. And a lot of that comes with bravery. You know, I've been in rooms where someone's put their hand up and said, actually, this doesn't feel right. This feels a little bit uncomfortable to me. I want to kind of look at this from a different angle. And often that one person being brave and saying something, you'll get that mirrored by a lot of other people where they're like, actually, you're right. I think that as well. Let's explore it a little bit deeper. So hopefully these will be useful documents for you that you can access and share.
Came from.
So to kind of bring these to life a little bit, I've already touched on the fact that professional curiosity and managing different professional perspectives, I don't think there's many audits or serious case reviews that I've come across that doesn't highlight this element in some way. And I am going to kind of touch on a couple of cases from local learning. I am very aware, you know, we are talking about quite significant abuse of children and young people across North Yorkshire, and just kind of from a trauma-informed point of view, if you are finding it difficult to kind of hear some of these details, I'm not going to go into any complex detail. I'm just giving you a bit of an overview, but please be kind, look after yourself. If you need to kind of take these 5 minutes to go and have a brew, do so. But I always feel like we kind of owe it to ourselves to kind of look at these case reviews and pull the learning as much as possible. So I'm going to start with Child X. Now, Child X is quite a complex safeguarding practice review case. Some of you, from the fundamental anonymous details of this case, may think, actually, we know this family, or we've worked with this family previously. I would ask that you don't put anything identifiable in the chat, and we've tried to anonymise it as much as possible. Again, so this refers to a 6-year-old child whose parent was in a polyamorous relationship with 2 transgender adults. Child X had previously resided with grandparents out of area, and we had Child X and their parent making an unplanned move to North Yorkshire with 2 adults who they'd met via social media. So this was the parents' first time having responsibility for Child X, and they were a significant distance away from grandparents and that support network, and they were considered vulnerable, and they were accessing additional support as a result of that. Sadly, however, it transpired that Child X received quite significant injuries as a result of abuse while living in that household, and this was kind of highlighted in quite significant bruises and marking. Now, if we look at the learning, there is a lot of learning on this case, and I would encourage you to read the 7-point briefing about this, but I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the main bits around professional curiosity. And it goes back to what I was saying again around the alternative hypothesis. So Child X was displaying some challenging, I put in inverted commas, behaviour that professionals were finding quite hard to explain and understand. Now, at the time, this was put down to a possible neurodiversity diagnosis, but there wasn't really any consideration given to whether this child's behaviour may have been due to trauma or emotional neglect. So by no means am I saying that this child didn't have a neurodiversity, but there may have been other explanations which came to pass as to why this young person was displaying these particular behaviours, particularly when they weren't able to kind of communicate what was happening verbally. So it kind of begs us to consider kind of if trauma and those kind of additional experiences had been considered, would we have had a different outcome and be explored for this child? There was another one in relation to there were 3 adults in the household who Child X referred to as dad. and assessments carried out focused on the biological parent and the risk relating to the 2 other adults in the household were not always explored. So again, it's that kind of understanding different perspectives and looking at kind of how that develops that whole picture of what's happening for that child. As I've already said, Child X's voice wasn't always captured verbally. That young person wasn't always able to kind of express what was going on for them through speech. But what we could have started to look at with a professionally curious mindset is that consideration of the behaviours and what that young person is trying to communicate with us non-verbally. There was also an element of professional curiosity and perhaps a lack of confidence in dealing with elements of gender pronouns when Child X was discussing who was in the household, which again just boils down to some of that professional curiosity, and we touch on that in the session around that kind of, if you're not sure about the language to use, ask and let that family or young person tell them the language they feel comfortable with, and then you mirror that language. Just moving on, we're going to look at child Y and sibling Z. So child Y was a 6-week-old baby boy who was seen in hospital with a lump to his leg, which parents had said had increased in size over the previous 12 days. Subsequent x-rays confirmed that child Y had sustained an unexplained fracture to his leg, and a subsequent skeletal survey identified multiple additional fractures to all 4 limbs and to his ribs. Medical opinion concluded that the fractures were likely non-accidental. Child Y had an older sibling, sibling Z, who was aged 3.5, who upon medical examination wasn't found to have any additional injuries. At the time of child Y's injuries, the family were only known to Universal Health Services. So with this case, mum began to raise concerns at around 5 weeks old of child Y having being really unsettled, so lots of trouble feeding, crying inconsolably. Several contacts were made to 111, GP, and we had some home visits by the health visitors. Mum raised concerns with the GP over the phone about the lump on the leg of child Y, and she was advised, because it was the end of the day, to go straight to hospital. This didn't happen, but mum attended the GP the next morning, who again advised her to go straight into A&E. Mum had had extensive additional support from services as a child and was care experienced. And I think professionals working with the family recognised the cumulative risks they faced, but they may not have fully grasped the impact of these additional stressors, particularly around child Y and mum's real worry about these extended periods of crying. And again, there was some issues around sibling Z's behavioural needs, which there was a very similar theme to what we were talking about with child X previously. Child Y had been noted to appear to be visibly in pain, and this communication should have led to a more detailed assessment from a medical point of view. One of the things that I think this kind of falls into the professional curiosity guidelines is just in relation to kind of our icon messages around babies crying, and also this campaign that we put together as a partnership last year around Ask Me. Ask Me isn't just for medical professionals, GPs, health visitors. It's very much for kind of you guys from an education point of view. You will often see mum or dad in a playground, and they've maybe just had a newborn, or siblings in primary school, and they're talking about a new baby that's just arrived, and we know the challenges that having a newborn baby can present. even if it's your second or third, you know, that dynamic and that context of the family can change significantly. And Ask Me is very much around just having those open and honest conversations with parents. You know, if you're speaking to a parent and they're just going, do you know, I'm just so tired, baby just won't stop crying, I don't know what to do. We all have that role to just be a little bit professionally curious around that, and just, you know, have some of those conversations, make it not taboo, that a parent can sort of say, I'm really, really struggling. And those resources are all on Ask Me as well, so you can direct families to some of those resources and some of that additional learning as well. So I will always say that's a really key one around babies, infants, around safe sleep, continual crying, safe feeding, anything like that. You know, think about the fact we've got Christmas coming up, and we've got changes in often living arrangements, travel arrangements. You know, you'll hear people saying, oh, we're going to go stay at so and so's for Christmas. People need to be having those curious conversations about, okay, so how are you planning on kind of arranging the sleeping arrangements? You know, where's baby going to sleep? Because what we don't want is that idea of people not having those sleeping arrangements, and looking at some of the risks around co-sleeping, particularly if those, you know, if they're partaking in any alcohol or smoking. So yeah, as I've just touched on those, really. There are a couple of our local learning reviews. Please do kind of keep an eye on our webpage. We do have everything dedicated to all of our learning on the professional section. I think, is it Kelly, you're going to touch on learning from some of the national ones?
Oh, hi, Kat, it's Joanna. I'm going to do it today.
Oh, okay, no problem. Go on, Joanna. And do you want me to move you on to the next slide?
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you. So, hi, everybody. So I'm Joanna Conway. I'm one of the safeguarding advisors from the school improvement team. And I'm just going to go through, it's just one case study today. Links in perfectly, really, with what Kat's just been discussing around that professional curiosity and having those conversations with other professionals. So this is a learning review that's been published from Bradford. So I'm just going to touch on one today for yourselves. So there is learning in the report for all agencies involved, but I'm just going to concentrate on the learning for designated leads in schools. So the case is around a 10-year-old boy who's child B and his 9-year-old sister, child C, who were removed from their home in Bradford in July 2022 after an anonymous referral to the police, and they completed a welfare visit where they were so concerned about child B's poor presentation and home conditions, they exercised their powers to protect the children. Child B was found severely dehydrated and malnourished, and subsequently he was discovered he had extreme rare undiagnosed chronic health condition, but though later the children have disclosed about the abuse from their parents, from physical and emotional abuse. So just a bit of background for the child, really. The child B did appear very thin, pale. He was reported to having eating issues in the home and in school. And when child B, his BMI was taken in hospital, it was 10.1, and it should have been in the region of 17. So there should have been people picking up the concerns about his weight. So there is some evidence in the report that there was that not all information was always shared to schools, so we have to take, but I'm just going to concentrate on some of the learning for schools here as a designated lead. So really, it's just to make you aware that it's looking at those patterns, like Kat said before, links in perfectly about professional curiosity with this case. There had been 5 anonymous referrals from members of the public regarding the children's presentation, home conditions over a period of time. So it's looking at those patterns, and like Kat said, being that brave professional, when maybe other professionals aren't picking up concerns that you have in that professional professional curiosity and asking those questions and sharing concerns. In this case, the fact this child was severely losing weight and the eating issues and the presentation and what was coming back from health practitioners. So really, it is a common theme we see around this professional curiosity not always being followed up. Next slide, please, Kat. Again, with this case, again, it was concerns around the attendance and lateness in school and that pattern. Again, the school had raised that with children's social care and asked for advice, and they had been advised to complete an early help form to get support for the family and submit the early help tool, although this was never completed. So really learning for designated leads is here to make sure you do have a system in place to track those recommendations and actions within your records to ensure that is being followed up in school, because that was a missed opportunity that maybe if that family had been offered that early help route and support, if they'd accepted it, then that is something that could have maybe intervened much earlier. Next slide, Kat. And again, it's just remembering that neglect in these cases, it's just not a one-off, it's a cumulative concerns that build up. So the real importance on good agency records and having that information building up over a period of time and being reviewed. So it was picked up in the review that the school's records prior to September 21 were very limited around these children, but during the review it was commented on the timeline that was shared would have maybe helped social care and other practitioners to make further decisions and support that maybe professional curiosity and thinking about this case. So again, just be careful of making sure you are recording interactions with the parents, like Kat was saying, the interactions that staff are having with parents around concerns, what are their responses, making sure that's recorded when the children are being seen, their voice. So that's building that picture and helps you when you speak to other professionals. So that's really key. And next slide. And again, I've covered that one, that, you know, they did comply at a timeline. And sometimes that's really good to do, to get your timeline, look at your records. If you use electronic record, that's really great. But if you don't, make sure you do have a timeline that you do review regularly to see, is there any patterns? Have you reviewed that at your meetings with your deputy designated leads, with your head teacher, and explored that case where you have got concerns, and do it together, so you are exploring and getting some professional curiosity or opinions from other members of your team. There might be the SENCO involved, the class teacher, you know, anybody, your attendance team, of maybe having contact with the parent. So it's about everybody getting together, looking at that timeline, and then review and having those conversations with other professionals. So really key, the record keeping. Next slide, Kat. And again, in reviewing your records, you know, it's really important that you do look at those issues that have been presented. So in these notes, there was concerns about low-level neglect from the parents, financial difficulties, the fact that professionals and the school were offering support, but that was being refused, it wasn't being taken up. So it's just been, again, that review is really important to think, actually, is there some disguised compliance here, and can that be leading to drift and delay on actions being taken, support being given to that child and family? So another thing adding to that pattern of what needs to be reviewed. The next slide. Again, school attendance is really key, and again, the point here is around reminding schools to flag up when you have no shows. So at the beginning of each year, when you've got your new admissions coming in, your new year group, if then children don't turn up, and in this situation, child B didn't start school in September when he was statutory school age. The parents didn't get their school of choice, so didn't take up the place, but there was no follow-up from the school not letting the school admissions know that that child hadn't taken up that place, and again then the follow-up from the CME team, the child missing from education team, to follow that up to make sure that that parent then could go supported through the appeals process to get into that child's choice. So there was a long period before that child did start school. So again, opportunities around educational neglect there and a child missing in education that hadn't been flagged up. And again, this leads in again to again around monitoring non-school attendance. Again, when the reviews looked at the school's records, there was periods again where the child wasn't, both child B and C weren't in school, periods of time when they weren't because around the the pandemic, the COVID period, where the parents were reluctant to send the child into school because of concerns around dad's health needs. But again, there was limited records at the school around who had contact with the parents at that time, who was seeing or hearing from that child, from both children during that time. Were there regular home visits? And since then, that school has addressed their attendance policy to make sure that they have clear procedures for following up when a child isn't in school, and to follow up with those referrals. So again, that educational neglect really does sit alongside and making sure that children that aren't attending school are seen on a regular basis and procedures followed. So that's the case again for you to read through. Like I say, kind of press upon it, you know, it was a learning to take away, not just for designated leads, but for a number of agencies. And it really stresses the importance of sharing information, especially those key points if you're taking over as a designated lead or a child arrives at your setting. Make sure you take that time to look at the timeline to see if there's any patterns of concerns, and make sure you are reviewing it. And there's a 7-minute briefing from another local authority about the importance of communication between one setting to another. And again, if you are a new designated lead, the importance of just looking at those cases, those possible long-term neglect that need to be reviewed and picked up, and use some of that, what Kat said today, that professional curiosity, and then having those further conversations with other professionals, and maybe being that person that sticks their neck up and uses their voice to share their concerns. So hopefully that fits in well with what you shared previously. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Joanna. We're wrapping up now. You've got 5 minutes before the end of the session, so just a couple of very quick slides. We're just going to do a little bit of a poll just in this morning session and this afternoon session, just in relation to the DSL network meetings that we hold. And the question is really kind of, are you happy at the minute with the time sessions, the slots that we offer? Do you prefer an AM session or an afternoon session, or would you prefer it? Would it be easier for you kind of fitting it in with your busy school days if we ran a twilight session instead? So that would be kind of after school, 4 till 6, 4:30 till 6:30-ish. So just while I'm kind of going over the last couple of slides, can I ask you to just pop in the chat what you would prefer? We'd much rather run the sessions based on kind of what you guys are telling us. We want it to be at the most convenient and most appropriate time for you guys to kind of fit in with your day job as well. So just a reminder, we've covered a lot around kind of practice guidance and 1-minute guides today. You can scan those QR codes. They are really quick and easy, and again, things that you can send around to staff teams where they can kind of access things very, very quickly at the scan. And there's our training link there as well. Upcoming learning sessions, we have had the session on the 6th of November around professional curiosity and managing different professional perspectives. But like I say, I would really encourage you to access that one on the YouTube channel and share it as much as possible. We do have our first practitioner forum, which is tomorrow. Now, we probably do have some people on the session who are down to attend, but this is kind of a little bit of a partnership. We're just kind of experimenting with it really, just to see if we want to kind of get frontline practitioners together to consult with them around some of the work that we're doing. We know, like, right across, you know, we're not just talking schools, we're talking voluntary sector, GPs, police officers, you know, social workers. We know the wealth of information that they hold and experience, and we want to kind of tap into that and work with them. We know that when we're producing documents and stuff, they tend to land a lot better when we're working with people rather than doing to people. And hopefully this is the opportunity for practitioners to kind of come to us as a business unit and as a partnership and talk about the key themes and issues that are kind of impacting on their practice as well, so we can kind of work a bit of a two-way stream of communication. If you are interested in coming, I would ask you to email the NYSCP inbox. Hayden, I wonder if you'll just pop that in the chat for me, and we can send you the Teams link. We'll be doing kind of a Menti poll for the opening session tomorrow. There is no kind of commitment of, oh, if you come, you've got to come to every meeting moving forwards, but with this first session will be very much a kind of, how do we want to develop this, what do we want it to look like, and how do we want it to be of value for the people who are coming along. Another one that's coming up on the 4th of December, we have a really important learning session. We've extended it to 2 hours. Many of you know we had a new iteration of Working Together 2023, which was launched roughly a year ago now, really. As a partnership, we've been kind of working in the background for nearly 12 months, right across all of our partners, in terms of what this working together means for practice and for us in North Yorkshire. So this is an opportunity. You'll have our statutory lead partners from Health, North Yorkshire Police and Children and Families Service, as well as education representation and voluntary sector representation, talking about who they are and what they do and how we work together. And then importantly, we'll talk around kind of what the changes to working together mean. And as a partnership, we have a national kind of obligation to produce our multi-agency safeguarding arrangements document that needed to be updated as a result of the working together changes. And we will have that published and ready to share hot off the press on that session on the 4th of December. Obviously, it'll be available on the website afterwards, but I really would encourage you to attend that one. And then moving into January and February 2025, which sounds very scary, we will be looking at the results of our Growing Up in North Yorkshire survey, and we will have a session on reducing parental conflict as well. As always, our last slide, again, you can scan the QR, that'll take you to our e-bulletin where you can sign up for monthly updates. But you've got our website, our X account, Facebook and YouTube, where we do try and kind of promote some of those key messages throughout. That takes us bang on to 11:30, so I will stop sharing. People have been popping in the chat whether they would prefer morning, afternoon or a twilight session, so please do add that before you leave at the end of the day. We'll stop the recording now, but as policy officers, and Joanna, if you're around, we'll stick around for an additional few minutes if anyone has any questions